So this is session 2 of our mastermind. I am very grateful to have you all here and really excited about the relationships that we're building. I know that everyone is registered and I have given you the link for the donation in the chat box. If you are watching this as a recording, I'll make sure that the link is available to you. And for those of you who weren't able to make it today, we'll be making sure that you can watch the video afterwards. We really appreciate you letting us know when that happens. So thank you. Want to talk about the questions that you submitted. As I said, at our Q&A on the 16th, we're gonna actually go through what all those questions were and how they're in common, what you have in common. If you have additional questions that you know you'd really like us to talk about, don't feel at all concerned about sending me them. I'm very happy to see what's on your mind, and some of those things will change as we go along. So anytime a question comes up over the course of the time that we're working together, feel free to send it to me. Jean-Marie, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe the address is businessmastermind@unitysouthcentral.org. And that will come. If we use that address, it will make it easy for me to find things, and the region can also kind of see that we're active. So
yeah, I'm putting it in chat real quick.
Awesome.
Maybe southcentral.org. Yeah. Oh, sorry, that's my Business Mastermind. It's basically just the title of the support call that works for every support call, and then at unitysouthcentral.org. And that way you get not only to Ariana, but you also get to our staff, who then often can support Ariana in some of the requests that you might have.
So, and easy to remember. So Christine sent in 2 questions. And the first is, how do we evolve and at the same time hold in place the traditions elder members of the community value? And the second was, how do we build trust? And these are both, if I can't see you all right now because we're sharing screen, but I know you'd all nod your head, because these are things that we all deal with. These are questions that come up for everybody in ministry, whether you're on the board, you're an LUT. If you are interacting with the community, you are going to interact with the question that is, how do we keep what people love and also grow into something new? And all of that is really, that building trust is foundational to that. So we're going to talk about that today. But before we do, we're going to talk about values, because values are foundational. And I know that most of you have probably done your mission, vision, and core values for your community. That's not, and if you haven't, that's something that we should talk about at some point. But those are not the values that I'm talking about today. Today, I'm talking about your values. What for you in particular is important in how you interact in the world. Management is about persuading people to do things they do not want to do, while leadership is about inspiring people to do things they never thought they could. That's a profound quote. Management is about persuading people to do things they don't want to do. Leadership is about inspiring people to do things they never thought they could. So when we look at the foundation of business, trust is everything. And we build trust by helping people move forward and being consistent in who we are. And our consistency in who we are is really about our values for life. When we live from the values that we hold true, regardless of what anybody else's values are, when we live from those values, people are able to rely on us because they know who we're going to be in any situation we're in. And that's really what this is, what this whole building trust is seated in. So a value is the importance, worth, or usefulness of something. The importance, worth, or usefulness of something. In our case, mostly the usefulness of something. These are just ideas. And I want you to look at them and pick out 3. Just any 3. And if you have a piece of paper next to you, write them down. These might be things that you value in other people. Maybe you value kindness. Maybe you value being kind. Maybe you value ambition in people who work with you, or creativity, or professionalism. For me, authenticity and kindness are 2 of the big ones, and probably on this list, and these are obviously just a very small collection of words that we could work with. Probably the 3rd for me is open-mindedness. Those 3 are probably the ones that come to me. So these are ideas. They are not values. Does anyone have an idea why they are not values? And if you do, just speak up because I can't see your face. I heard you breathe, whoever that was. Go ahead, Bill. Bill, are you there?
I'm here, but I don't have a good answer for your question of why these aren't values.
Anybody else have an idea? Go ahead, Kitty.
I'm just taking a guess. These are the kind of things I should think through for 10 minutes before I open my mouth.
No, just talk.
And yeah, well, interestingly enough, a word that spoke to me here was performance, but I wouldn't call that a value, because it's not a state of being, it's a doingness kind of thing, and it's an accomplishment. Whereas I think values, I think what you're aiming at here is, I'll just stick with beingness. It's a way of being.
Awesome. So here's, first of all, let's acknowledge that all of us have different ways of using the English language. And so you might totally disagree with how I position this, and that's okay. However, we're finding ways to think about things together. And in application to what we're talking about, which is how we lead and how we show up consistently, these are ideas about qualities we would like to embody. They are not the actions that build trust. So we are looking for in ourselves the things that we can share with other people that are true about us and will always be true about us, no matter what the circumstances. So I told you that open-mindedness is one of mine. I'm very deeply committed into interfaith work. And it's very important to me in my capacity as a minister that I am open-minded to people's ideas about their spirituality. They can count on that from me. That will always be true. If somebody comes to me and says, well, I know that you're from Unity, but I'm Hindu really, and I love being at Unity, but this is how I operate, or this is how I pray, I'm going to be open-minded to that always, because it's part of the core of who I am. I am never going to say to somebody, well, while you're here at Unity, you need to do things in the Unity way, because it's not the core of who I am. So I could say, as a core value, I practice open-mindedness in all spiritual realms. That's a statement that I can make about who I am, that people can count on no matter what. That I will operate out of kindness is not as strong a value, because what I know about myself is, as much as kindness is a core value for me, if I allow myself to get too stressed, I'm not as kind as I would be at other times. So while that might be a value that I'm working on, it's probably not one that I'm going to really use in my narrative with the people I work with. I'm looking for from you today a couple of core values that can become part of your narrative. And some of these are really interesting to think about. For example, when we think about power and control, are you a person who needs power and control, power or control? So when you're working with a staff of people, it's important to let them know what you want to control and what you want them to control. That area of conversation is really important to your relationship. What is your control statement, your power statement? Are you wanting to hold power and direct, or are you wanting to empower and guide? Those are two different ways. Not that one is better than the other. And I would venture to go as far as to say there are times that you need both of those. There are times that you need to have power and control and direct, and times that you need to empower and guide people to do their own work. This is just meant to be a list of things for you to think about. There are lots, you can go online and just ask for a list of core values, and you'll get lots and lots of words that you can evaluate. And you remember that I said to you in the beginning, you will get out of our time together what you put into it. This core piece is about developing for your community a narrative about who you are and how you do things. A story that you can tell them, but more importantly, values you can live into that you know are true for you. Because when those values are true for you, you might say, how am I ever going to express to them that I want power and control? That's a story, the narrative. We have to work on the narrative. How do you talk about it? But if it's a core belief for you, a core value for you, that you need to have a certain amount of power and control in your community, you have to be willing to be honest with yourself about that so that we can work on the story. Another one that and the one on this list that I want to invite all of you to consider before we move forward is, what is your relationship with the word mastery? In what ways have you mastered the art of what you do? And this is life in general. Where would you say I've worked my whole life to master this? That word is one that we're losing in society. The idea that we stick with something. And when Jean-Marie talks about looking 20 years in the future, there is a commitment to mastery that is important to us being able to look that far ahead. What are the skills and values that you are working to master? Because there's another piece of your personal narrative that is about sharing that. This is the area I feel I've mastered, and here is an area I'm working to master. And when you tell people what your strengths and your weaknesses are, they begin to feel like they can trust you when you express either one of those, because you've already told them, you've already let them know who you are and how you function and why. So
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
If there was something on that list that appeals to me, but I don't feel mastered, even remotely, is that something I value? I mean, does that go on the list or not? Is it something I can't tell my congregation, this is what you can expect from me, but it's something I really wish you could expect from me. So where does it fit?
Tell me what.
Creativity.
Perfect. So if creativity is a value that you want to cultivate and you want that to be part of your narrative, you can really easily work that into a Sunday lesson. First of all, you can very easily say, hey guys, I'm working on developing more creativity and expanding that right side of my brain. If you're involved in something really creative, let me know what it is. Tell me about how you exercise your creativity. This is a great question for your community on your Facebook page. It's a great question you can send out to them in your, in your blog to them. Hey guys, I'm looking for ideas about how to grow my creativity. I'd love it if you'd send me a note and let me know what you think, what you do. Because now you have seeded an idea, Kitty, in your community that can be really fun to talk about. And it also tells them something, right? It
Mhm.
tells them, this is something I'm developing. And you can look at their ideas, you can have conversations with people that are working on it. And in 6 months, you can come back and go, I took a watercolor class. It was amazing. Here's what I learned in watercolor class. One of my most fun sermons was a lesson that I gave on kayaking. And what I learned the first day I went out on my kayak about how you hold the paddle and what it takes to move and, how it's different than what you think. And all of that stuff, of course, related back to principle, but you can work that creativity into lots of fun things and really make it part of your conversation and also let them know it's not your strength, right? Because you're working on it. Does that make sense to you? Great. So this is a question. Do you think that your staff and your community understands your personal values? Have you been expressive about what's important to you? Like I said, most of us are really good about whatever the core values of the community are. But it's important for people to know what's important to you and how you function, because trust is based on a sense of intimacy and reliability. So we are, whatever we communicate, they feel intimate with us. They feel close to us when they can trust what we say is true for us. There was a person on my board last year who really, was really important to him was how we spent money in a different way. So fiduciary responsibility is always important to a board. That's their job. But saving for this particular person was incredibly important. That put me at odds with my board president, because I'm a person who believes you put money into circulation and it comes back around. Be wise, cover your bills, make sure you've got something, but saving is not as important to me as the good work we're doing that motivates people to continue to support the good work. So I had to learn how to talk with that person, because I knew he would always come to me with that question. And he was, even though it was hard, he was consistently that person. And that's what we want to accomplish. We want our community and our staff to know what our personal values are and how we make our decisions in life. And we really can't make any change in our community without that. Personal values are the driver behind our actions. Our personal values are how we make our choices, and any endeavor to reinvent ourselves or our community will have its foundation in our personal values. Now, the caveat to that is you can choose that you are going to run everything through core values, the core values of the community. And it should run that way, shouldn't it? We should be operating for the community. But the only way to know if you have a core value in the community that is in opposition to a core value of your own is if you know what your personal values are. And this is a piece of work we don't usually do. We usually just do the work for the community. So that's why I want you to take some time with this over the next 2 weeks and really consider and notice the values in your life that drive your life. Kitty, you had a question.
So kind of tagging on to what I asked before in the opposite spectrum is I mean, you just said that they drive your life, and I've always thought your subconscious drives your life, but what if they're one and the same, and what's in your subconscious is a value of, like in your case, you had a board member who needed a certain amount of money to feel safe. Okay. So I'm sure that there's stuff in my subconscious that drives my behavior that are you saying, is that a value, whether it's a good value or a bad value? I mean, what's the difference between value and fear?
Well, fear can be a value, right? I live from fear could be a value statement.
Not so much the word fear, but a type of fear.
Right, right.
Okay.
So first of all, we all have subconscious drivers. Those are there. And we spend our whole life, I think, kind of unwrapping and what's the word? When you're a person who digs up dinosaur bones, what's that?
Archaeologist.
Right. So we're the sole archaeologist uncovering in our whole life what has happened from our young life and is hidden in our psyche. So we're going to find those values, but some of these values are things that you can easily identify. Think about the people who work for you. Does it matter to you if they show up on time? Are you a time person? Does it matter if somebody is reliable? Does it matter to you what things, one of the easiest ways to figure out what you really value, what drives you, is to figure out what makes you crazy. What does somebody have to do to get under your skin? Because that will tell you, like, justice is a big deal for me. It needs to be fair. And if you want to do something and it's not fair to the people involved, my justice need for things to be just and fair will come into play really quick. It happens if I feel like I'm not being treated fairly or someone else isn't being treated fairly. What are the things that get under your skin? Think about who bothers you. What people in your community, and we all have them, what people annoy you. When I started in ministry, I asked a dear friend who had been in ministry for about 20 years, what do you wish somebody told you at the beginning of this? And he said two things. The first is, there are going to be 17 people in your congregation who you think are just there to make your life miserable. And if you bought a bus and a condo for all of them in the town 20 miles away, and you moved them all away, 17 more people would fill those positions. Do not try to move out people who disagree. Figure out why they disagree. And the second thing was, all anybody wants from you ever is to feel loved. And those two pieces of advice guided me through so many things. So many things. They were so important to my time in ministry. Who would you put on the bus? And why? Because those people are going to be people who value something different than you do. And looking at that will help you to see what values you put into effect in your life. And then the idea is that we learn to talk about them. Because the story we tell is really how people get to know us. Over time, you will learn a lot about me because I'm going to tell you the story of my time in ministry and my life as we work together. I will get to know about you because you'll share your stories with me. When you know what your values are, then you're able to say, I really value people being gracious with one another. I really value hearing what you're grateful about, what goes well for you. I really value a nice, clean set of financial records because they allow me to make good decisions. Whatever it is, these things, when you're aware of them and you begin to talk about them, then if you have to hold somebody accountable for something, they're not going to be surprised. because they know what you value. So I want to invite you to think about the story you are telling people about you and how you build a sense of trust in who you are and what people can expect from you.
Whether it was the Gettysburg Address or whether it was FDR's For Freedom speech, they're all basically pointing back to the Declaration of Independence to remind us and reignite as to why what we're about to do, go to World War II, go to Civil War, is important for us to make that sacrifice because we're upholding these values upon which our company was founded, our country was founded. So absolutely they should be written down because it makes us more accountable, right? Because somebody can say, we're not doing that. And by the way, please don't write honesty on the wall. Because if you have to write honesty on the wall, you have much bigger problems, right? And we don't write, what values should be written on the wall as verbs. They're things we do. Values are things we do. Like innovation is not a value, right? Honesty is not a value, right? And because they're not actionable. You can't walk into someone's office and say, be more innovative. I don't know what to do. Be more honest. I didn't think I was dishonest, right? But if we write on the board, always tell the truth. Look at the problem from a different angle. Give me something to do. Those are values, because values have to be actionable. They have to be doable. But we write them as these staid nouns on walls and expect people to live our values. I don't know how to live innovation. I don't know how to live value. You know, provide value. Is that a calculation? We spent less on partially hydrogenated and high fructose corn syrup in our ingredients. Is that value? Right? But yes, when well conceived, absolutely they should be written down. I'm a great believer. Look at any great monotheistic and polytheistic religion. There's usually a book. And that book is used for reference. So I'm a great believer in writing things down. I think companies should have manifestos that explain the vision they have for the future world in which we will exist, which they will commit themselves to help advance, that has nothing to do with their products or their services. Barry Waymiller, that makes manufacturing equipment, says that we exist to build great people to do extraordinary things. We define success by how we touch the lives of humans, of each other. It's a manufacturing company. Because it's not about what they make. It's about using their company to build people to do extraordinary things and to value the success and measure the success by how well they do that. No company, you don't have a manifesto if you're the only ones who care about it. And if it's based on your product or your service, you're the only ones who care about it, right? We're here to do the things you don't want to do so that you can do the things you want to do. That's not, nobody cares. To provide the best possible service and the lowest possible price, well, no one cares. Like, nobody reads that and goes, I want to work there, you know? But if you say, we exist to provide good, clean family fun, to provide people an escape from reality, I want to work at Disney. If you say, I'm here to challenge the status quo and give individuals the power to stand up to Big Brother, if you're that mindset, I want to work for Apple. If you say we're here to help people be more productive in their world, I want to work for Microsoft. These are causes that have nothing to do with their companies. They've just used their companies to help advance those causes. Yes, write it down. Yes, write it down. And then make sure that your people hold you accountable to the things you wrote down. Yes, 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 yes.
So now I want to show you an example of a company who has explained what their values are to their staff.
Yeah.
Radio.
Have you got my right side?
I usually keep a pen in my pocket.
Yeah, very good.
Well,
I should tell the camera just in case it's good.
okay. All right, cool, okay.
For a company like MuleSoft, who's grown so much in the past 10 years, the fearless culture really comes in that we never really quite got complacent. There's always this sense that something could be better.
Day-to-day life at MuleSoft is that nothing is set in stone and absolutely nothing is sacred.
Something that resonates with me called radical candor, and it takes out the politics and it allows everybody to be able to express themselves without fear of some kind of retribution.
It can be kind of scary to go up to someone that maybe owns a certain process and tell them, hey, you know, I think that there's a better way we could do this.
It's actually good to see a company that has a lot of youth and listen to them, and I see them in leadership roles.
I often find myself being the most junior person in the room, and yet my voice of challenging the status quo is listened to just the same.
Making it awesome doesn't just mean checking the boxes.
It means that we all fundamentally care about the growth of this company and how we scale. Building for scale means paving roads, so we don't have to recreate the wheel, ask the same questions, have the same pains, have the same problems.
It's about going above and beyond and providing an incredible experience. That's not a norm, and at MuleSoft it is. And I think that's really special of how much we care about people.
So when you think about an owner versus a renter, when a renter has a problem, they ask someone else to fix it. But if you're an owner, you see that problem and you bring solutions.
Nobody is sitting around waiting for something to happen or waiting for another action to be requested of them. Rather, they're thinking 3 steps ahead. It really is every single level will roll up their sleeves. They are there to help at any point.
There's complete trust and freedom in the way that you are going to get to what you're being asked.
The investment that you put in, you're gonna feel that same thing from the folks that you work with.
Being a good human is really about doing the right thing in every interaction.
And part of that, being a good human, is to think about putting the company first, the team second, and the self last.
For me, I want to be around people that are interesting, that I have fun with, that I can connect with, and ultimately have a shared purpose with.
Honestly, keeping it positive and making sure that we keep collaboration front and center is what makes for a good human, and frankly, it also makes it really fun to be here.
To me, that is what makes this company special.
Just the immense amount of energy that's in the office on a day-to-day basis. And it's just a very exciting, enriching experience to come into the office every day. And I actually mean that.
So how many of you feel like, just looking even at the core values in your community, that your community could express in the way these people did what the core values of your community are? Just raise your hand if you think your community could do that. Okay. How many of you think you could express what the core values of your community are? Cool. So you can see why this subject is important. You can see why we need to think about the narrative that we're offering. Because wouldn't it be great if your board could say to you, hey, Kitty, here's what we know is important to you. Yeah. Hey, Christine, we did it this way because we know this really matters to you. Hey, Robert, we know this is really important to you and we'd like more of the community to feel that way. Can you teach about that? Because you're really a master in that area. These values are the foundation of trust. Both the core values that the community gives you in their development and the values that are really who you are and how you bring them together in your community. It means everything to every other question. That the values are how you make decisions together. And so we spend a lot of time on our vision and our mission, and core values are those like, let's throw half a dozen words against the wall. And they look nice up there, but they don't really get used. We don't really bring them back in and teach from them every year. Every year I used to tell the story of the Fillmores. How about you? Every year, right? A couple of times a year, usually. How many times do we talk about the values that are who we are personally, and the values that are the values of the community. Those things are going to make a really big difference in how we go forward and the success that we have. Okay, be brave. If you want to build trust, you have to be clear about expectations. And expectations are seated in who you are. You have to be clear about what those expectations are, and you have to hold other people accountable to them. If you never say them, I expect you to be on time, then you will have a very hard time when it comes time to say, you have not been on time. Oh, really? Was that part of what I was supposed to do? And on time is it's an extreme example. If you are trying to make a change and someone has said to you, yes, I'm willing to at least consider what you said. Great. I'm so excited that you've agreed to consider what I say. Then farther down the line, they're not doing that. You have the ability to say, do you remember that conversation we had where you said you would be willing to consider? This is a time I really need you to do that. I feel like what I have to share with you is important. So setting expectations becomes a really important part of what we do to build trust. And that comes from building those expectations come back to the values that we've agreed to. So credibility and reliability and intimacy equal trust. Credibility meaning that you have mastery in some areas. You are a minister, you are a board president, you are an LUT, you have credibility behind your voice because you've done a certain amount of work. You can reliably be counted on to behave in a certain way. That way is driven by your values. You have created in your community an awareness of what your values are because you've created a narrative that you can share with them. And you've done the work to find your own values for yourself so that it's easy for you to say what you value in relationship. And intimacy means I'm willing to take the risk to be authentic with you. I can be authentic with a board member and say, wow, I really get that saving is important to you. I hope that you can understand that in the abundance principles that I'm so committed to teaching, circulation is also really important. So how do we work together from these two perspectives to do what's best for our community? I can build real relationship around our differences if I know what they are and if I'm clear, if I set reasonable boundaries. This, putting everything in the bank and not improving the quality of the building, letting the building fall apart so that we can have money in savings, that's not a boundary. I am not the right minister for you if that's how we're going to operate, because I will never be happy here. So I can set clear and reasonable boundaries. I can clarify my expectation is that we'll create safety for the community around our money. And at the same time, we'll look at how we advance the state of being of our building, how we maintain things, how we grow in services because we spend money on things that allow us to be more high service than we are. I can be very authentic in who I am. Very clear about what's true because I know what I value and I know what you value, and I can communicate effectively about those things. I know that this is important to you. I care about that. I also know this is important to me, and we are looking for the middle ground. I can do what I say I will do, which makes me reliable. And if I have opened up a conversation and somebody can say, I know you really want to keep money in circulation, but listen, I'm really aware the utility bill is going up in 30 days and I don't think we're ready to spend that right now. Oh, I hadn't even thought about that. You're probably right about that. We should probably wait another month or so. I can easily admit if someone else can communicate with me clearly. I can admit when they have a better idea than I do, or whether if I've made a mistake in the way I'm thinking. So do you see how all of this stuff comes back to understanding what is important to us and what is important to the people that we serve? This is foundational to your ability to make change in your community. So Christine, you asked the question, how do I move people from tradition, from the elder part of our community that's tied to the traditions and the way we've always done things, into a place of evolution that allows us to expand into this new time and new way. So this is not, this little visual was, it shows up on some very early Unity training, because I was shown this in my first or second year of ministry in some community development training that Unity has. So I don't know whose training it is, and whoever that is, if we know who it is, we certainly want to speak their name in. This graphic has been incredibly important to me, Christine, in looking at how we do that, because the energy of tradition and evolution flow into each other. They are not two separate things. Evolution and tradition are inseparable. It is the strong foundation that we have that allows us to move into an evolving picture. And so really, this being able to show this graphic, just this very simple picture, and have a conversation about it, changed everything in my community. Because I was able to say, for those of you that have been here a long time and are really strongly seated in certain ways of doing things, I honor that you hold that tradition, that you hold a foundation for us. And for those of you that are looking at the exciting ways that we can evolve and grow into something new, especially right now while we're looking at hybrid churches and changes based on this pandemic and everything else, your creativity and enthusiasm are so needed. So we all have to understand that both sides of this are necessary. And when you are a traditionalist and someone is talking about evolution, I invite you to listen more deeply, to really pay attention, because that's a cutting edge place that secures our future. And if you are thinking hard about the evolution and you think that those old ideas just lock us in place, I invite you to listen more deeply for what is hidden in the traditions, to ask questions about why this tradition is important. It might be important because someone loves doing it. That matters in a community built on relationship. It might be important because the person who began doing this is someone that person values. And they don't want to let it go because it's how they remember something. It might be important because it's the day you get the most involvement in your community. But we have to listen to each other, and both of these sides are part of who we are as community. We are both seated in tradition and evolving to meet the needs of the changing world. And sometimes it's as easy as the right graphic.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and you can draw that. That's all I did on a big piece of paper. I just drew it. And we talked about it on a Sunday, about how spiritual communities both need the traditional base and also need to evolve. And it's a great lesson, isn't it? Because the lesson is really about listening and communicating effectively. And our job is build community. So what I want to invite you to do over the next 2 weeks, we get back together on the 16th. What I want to invite you to do is to work on your values. And when we come back on the 16th, I want to ask you what values, just 3 or 4, you really have identified as the guiding values for your life. And when I ask you that, it will give you a chance to tell me about it, to actually create your narrative and talk about that a little bit. And then we'll also go through all of the notices that you sent me about the things that are on your mind, the subjects that are on your mind. And if there's anything else you'd like to add to that list, I really want to invite you to please feel free to send any of your questions, and we'll bring them into the question and conversation on the 16th. Regarding this, I also want to invite you to look at the core values, if you have them, for your community. Look at them and ask yourself, are they core values that you're actually talking about? Are they pretty and on the wall and nobody really knows how to live into them? Or are they core values that your community is living into and using effectively? And we'll talk about that. Any questions before we close? Yes, ma'am.
Are these things that we should just have ready for next time, or was there something you wanted us to send you?
No, I want you to have them ready for next time.
Okay.
One of the things I'm really aware of is how busy you guys are. And I don't want you to have a, oh, it's the night before, I got to figure out what I was supposed to do. Even if you come next time and you go, I totally spaced that I was supposed to think about my values, then I'll just ask you if you have a hit on what they are, if what they might be for you. I want this to be easy. You're all busy. You have a lot going on. I also want it to move your mind during the course and move your heart during the course of your regular work, so that you notice, oh, wow, why is that so important to me? I find myself defending my position. What am I defending? What's the core value I'm defending that is important to me? And have I told them? Can they expect that out of me? Do they understand it? Okay.
Okay, thanks.
All right, good friends. Many, many blessings on the work that you do. Spirit, thank you for this time. As we move back out into the world, we take with us what is important and release the rest, and go forward to do the good work that comes from our deep connection to each other, the world, and our own indwelling divine. And so it is.
So it is. Thank you, Ariana.
Thank
See you
you.
guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Blessings.